But having his kid, you know. We're doing that.
I
Pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Right, I'd like to remind everybody that these proceedings are being recorded for the sole purpose of preparing accurate written minutes. Recordings are overwritten following approval of the minutes, eliminating eliminating all unofficial records of these proceedings. Will we repeat it?
Very good. It was already streaming.
So we have a couple guests here tonight. Mike, did you want to say anything?
I'm just here to observe it. Thank you all for being here again on a cold night in Carbon County.
Oh, I just have one comment. Dennis, you are so lucky you are in Florida.
He's speechless, is that?
Doesn't happen often.
All right, so can I get a motion, meeting minutes from December 21st, 2023?
I'll make a motion to accept them.
Second.
Have a first and a second. All in favor?
All right. Good, here.
Okay, so last time we left off, we were in the middle of discussing the draft program manual. We're halfway through, it, right?
Yes, and thankfully, the minutes actually said where we were, so,
Oh, it did?
yeah. So we got through section 1 and 2. So if everybody wants to go down to, well, first I want to point out that the version you were sent and but also the version that was printed, yes, have highlighted sections in it. And as was mentioned and requested last time, Anne actually went through and highlighted all the sections that it then highlighting indicates where the standards mirror the requirements of the DCNR C2P2 requirements. You can see there's a lot of stuff highlighted. Now, if we go to section 3, which is actually the
You didn't make any changes to the copy we had last week, right?
yes, I got rid of,
Well,
based
what
on,
we did, but not, you didn't make any changes on what we're covering tonight.
no, only to get rid of some red stuff, just because it was messy, but I don't think it deleted anything. They were minor, but we haven't talked about them yet, so it shouldn't be an issue. So section 3, which is the grant process, step by step. Step 1 is a pre-application meeting or a site visit with a program administrator. And Anne added in the DCNR holds both grant workshops and a requirement to contact the regional advisor. All of these steps in 1 through 12 are similar to those for DCNR, although DCNR has more extensive requirements. And then it mentions contacting the open space coordinator. Quick sidebar is, do we know, did you get funding for an open space coordinator?
Got it still in the works.
Okay. Step 2 is to submit the complete application. Step 3 is the county review of the application. Application review will begin upon receipt of the completed application based on project evaluation criteria shown in section 4 of this document. I imagine that kind of the side that you don't see here is that all of the applications will go into the county. They'll be reviewed there for completeness and then before they are sent to the Open Space Advisory Board for review. Step 4 is notification, county notification of the grant award. The timing and amount of any grant award is at the sole discretion of the county commissioners. The county commissioners will award the grants in a public meeting after the application deadline, and the Carbon County Office of Planning and Development return one fully executed copy of the grant contract to the applicants. The contract will specify the maximum amount of funds the county will provide, as well as the contract term. The contract itself will be designed. Then the Office of Planning and Development will notify the applicants that are not awarded grants. Step 5 is to proceed with the acquisition. Once the executed county contract has been received, the applicant may proceed with the acquisition. Applicant may contact the open space coordinator with any questions that arise during the due diligence period for the project. The following items will need to be completed and reviewed by the county prior to closing: title commitment, survey, phase 1 environmental assessment, technical review appraisal, drafting the draft of the deed, and for easement project, the draft of the conservation easement, and baseline documentation report. I should say draft, not drafting. The applicant may be asked to provide status reports or additional information as requested by the county at any time during the grant contract or during the contract term. Step 6 is the technical review or second appraisal submission to the county. Submit a technical review of the original appraisal or a second appraisal to confirm the original valuation conclusion, and please refer to the appraisal policy, and we will get to that later, the appraisal policy. Step 8 is to submit the final deed language or conservation easement language. Submit the final conservation easement or deed language for county review and approval. All documents for county review should be submitted in Word or similar format as opposed to a PDF to enable a straightforward comparison between the pre-approved county language and any proposed language. And as you'll recall, that's something that we talked about in the previous section. The time frame for easement review will vary and will be determined on a case-by-case basis. Completing the easement review may take as long as 1 month. Step 9 is preparing for settlement. Settlement is the sole responsibility of the applicant and may not occur prior to completing all the steps outlined above unless you have obtained a waiver for retroactivity to purchase the property or easement prior to the grant award. Requests for the release of county grant funds or acquisition costs cannot be processed until all required documentation has been received, reviewed, and accepted. The following items must be submitted 30 days prior to the anticipated settlement date: completed payment request form, copy of the commitment for title insurance, the boundary survey in a PDF format, and a geo-reference CAD file or a shape file, as well as the legal description for easement projects, the baseline documentation report, and then a copy of the phase 1 environmental assessment. Something that I was going to mention, and some of this might have to change as once the
county.
once the county reviews it legally, and if once there's a person on board to do this.
Once we review the estimates and controller, not the controller, the solicitor, to make sure how the money comes out.
When you're talking about that, are people gonna put a red flag on so it jumps out at them when they go and investigate the property? Like we do with the farmland stuff, those deeds are red flags to help the person? You don't understand what I'm saying?
What do you read?
Basically, it's automatically tagged on that it has to be included, that there's an easement on it.
Oh, okay.
That should be done automatically, I believe.
I did have one question on step 8. So it says completing the very last one, completing an easement review may take as long as 1 month.
That's something that
In theory, it could take longer. So that was just my question of like, do we want to put a timeline on there?
that's one of the things that we need to wait for the solicitor.
Yeah,
to-
I'm just thinking, I would hope a month, but
I would hope so too, because we don't want to, we
yeah.
don't want to drag stuff out any longer than it needs
But
to
I don't want to
be.
give somebody an expectation that like, oh, it's been 30 days. Where is it? Oh, maybe.
And again, that language might change
Okay.
when it goes through the And I think that like I had those sorts of things, called out on further up in the program manual, like the
Mhm.
comments on the side, those are all the things that the, commissioners will need to,
Mhm.
and then solicitor, if we approve and figure out. Oh, and that's the one thing I didn't mention is that Anne went through and highlighted, I went through and made the adjustments that we talked about at the last meeting and did those call outs to kind of point out the things that we need the commissioners' input on. Before moving. Step 10 is document reporting, so after the property closes, the deed and or the conservation easements must be recorded at the Carbon County Recorder of Deeds. Step 11 is the applicant grant closeout and final reimbursement request to the county. Grant closeout and requests for the release of the remaining county grant funds cannot be processed until all required documentation has been received, reviewed, and accepted. The following items must be submitted prior to reimbursement: a completed reimbursement request form, a copy of final settlement sheet, a copy of recorded deed or easement. And the county reserves the right to request further documentation prior to approving the reimbursement request. And one thing I want to mention here is because we have some unanswered questions further up about how if they can get some upfront money for the due diligence items, they would be reimbursement request, but that isn't included here because we don't know how that's gonna work. So there'll likely be some changes and tweaks to this once we get answers from the commissioners and the solicitor. And then final is step 12, county reimbursement payment. Processing the payment will take approximately 30 days from the date the documentation is determined to be completed and the reimbursement request approved. Payment will be made by check to the applicant or by direct deposit into the applicant's bank account on record with the county. Again, most of, a lot of this stuff in section 3 ties back to what we already talked about in much more detail in section 2, but this is just kind of laying out the steps of going through the program.
And I just want to make sure you all realize, I think you do, that the only thing that you're involved with here really directly is step 3. The review of the application. The planning office will be making sure the application, and so on and so on and so on, but that's the critical step. The commissioners need your advice on whether or not it's a good project. So that's step 3.
And as part of that review, it might also involve a site visit.
Right. So that would be a good idea.
And once the commissioners review it and the solicitor or whatever, so then are we going to go over this again or no?
Oh, the draft program?
Yeah, this whole deal.
I think we would probably come back to you with the updates to the program, especially if there's any significant changes, and just to make so that you're clear of what the process is in case anybody were to ask you. But I don't think we don't necessarily need to go through the whole thing again, but we could probably look at it again at a future meeting after the commissioners have approved it.
Yeah, this is what you are recommending to the commissioners, if you approve, whatever you approve, and then they get the final say on, and the solicitor, they get the final say on what the program manual looks like.
And I can't think of any examples, but I suppose there could be something that they could send back and ask you to change or think about, or again, I don't know what that would be necessarily, but it is a possibility.
The biggest thing would be like when we could pay out money. Like if we could do things in advance or if everything has to be paid out at the end, that's gonna be the big thing. That's gonna come from that.
But they might also want input on like when the program is gonna be open, like the timing of things. Or they might have to decide that themselves. So then we have section 4, which is just a rehashing of the project evaluation criteria, which was already approved by the commissioners. So I don't think we need to necessarily read through that again because you've already seen it, recommended it, and it's been approved. And then finally, so for this part, I can go up to the computer. Well, I've attempted to link the forms that are completed to this last page here. So first we have the grant application checklist. So the grant application checklist, which is completed and returned with a grant application. So the first group of documents is the grant application form. So there's this checklist, the application, and the grant application resolution, which I will show you in a moment. Then we have the supporting documentation, including the appraisal of the property that complies with the appraisal requirements, an agreement of sale or landowner letter of understanding. Ideally, it would be an agreement of sale, but we wanted to give a little bit of wiggle room in case they weren't quite there yet. But that'll really be, whether or not a landowner letter of understanding is accepted will be at the discretion of the county. A copy of any deed or other restrictions currently on the land, if applicable. For conservation easement projects, draft easement language or a summary of the easement restrictions. Maps showing the proposed project location, size of the parcel, public access, land use and protection status of adjacent parcels and any other pertinent information. And a letter of support for the project from relevant entities. So for instance, if a land trust is the applicant, they would try and get a letter of support from the local municipality. And then letters of funding commitment from all sources contributing to the project. As you recall, in the budget spreadsheet, it says what are the matching funds and are they received or pending? And so this would be where you would, if it is already received, you would attach the letters of funding commitment. So like a DCNR grant, if we don't have commitment on certain pieces yet, then Wildlands will make the commitment themselves. So in that case, we submit a letter from Wildlands saying we commit to the matching funds for this project. Whether or not a municipality is comfortable doing that is something they're going to have to figure out. But ideally, you'll get more points if you have that a commitment that is firm as opposed to pending. Questions about the application checklist, or is there anything you think we're missing? Or anything you think we shouldn't have?
Is there any requirements or anything like related to the kind of maps that have to be submitted, like, CAD file status, all of that kind of stuff will be laid out somewhere?
No, I don't think it's necessary for us to have any sort of like map templates or map package to send to them. I think most a land trust will have that capabilities, a GIS to make the maps, and municipalities would have access, the bare minimum would be pulling up the county public GIS information and printing, and getting maps from there. And then alternately, in order to show the protection status of adjacent parcels, We Can Serve PA has maps that you can go see, and you could screen capture the property in question, showing the surrounding areas. So I think that there's enough out there that we wouldn't need to necessarily create something within this program. But it is, if there was somebody in the GIS department at the county that got gung ho and wanted to put together something where you could just go in and type in the parcel ID and then it could spit out these different maps for you, that's potential for the future, but that's really, that would really have to be if the county GIS had the time and inclination and funding to do that. So then there's the application itself, which you have already seen. This still needs to be made prettier, and we still need to decide how we're going to, if it's going to be a PDF fillable form, if we want to do something where we use some online web-based service that you could fill it out online. York County does use an online service, and they have indicated that they'd be willing to talk to the county about how that works. I don't know if that's necessarily something, I think that's more of like a technical backdoor sort of thing that the county would have to figure out, or, you know, planning or the open space coordinator would have to figure out. I don't think it's necessarily something that the Open Space Advisory Board needs to worry about. So just to remind you what the application questions look like. And then we have a grant application resolution, which of course needs to be reviewed by the solicitor, but I pulled this together from a couple of different models. It's basically just a resolution saying that the applicant, the person is, the applicant is their board is allowing them to apply for this grant. I tried to put together the land trust and the municipal one. They might have to come back apart again, depending on what the solicitor says, but this is my first stab at putting a singular one together based on some ones that are out there existing already. So then next, the payment request forms, I have not put those together. Then we have the, going into the other documents, we do have all of these in draft form. We have the appraisal policy. Open. Which I think may have been shared. Was this something that was shared like right in the beginning?
Remember, to look.
So this is kind of a combination of, I think, the Chester County appraisal policy and the DCNR appraisal policy. And after I put this together, I had someone at our real estate manager take a look at it as well, because he also reviews appraisals for us. So again, these are just guidelines that I don't think we necessarily need to go through, but that we would provide to the applicant, and then they would provide to their appraiser to make sure that they matched these guidelines. And if anybody's interested in seeing these actual documents, you know, Jason can share them.
I'll find them.
Then we have the We Conserve PA Model Conservation Easement. Is a recall from part 2 of the program manual. We had said that this is what we're going to use. And so We Conserve PA over, see, I should have brought my little spiel that I give when I'm normally talking about this. And I think I mentioned, we talked a little bit about this during that presentation, I think last time, like a Conservation 101 presentation. But so there is a whole nother document that goes along with this that's a commentary, but this is the general model template. It goes through background, information about transfer and subdivision, and then it goes into the different protection areas, highest protection. It tells you the limitations on improvements and activities and uses. Same with standard, and then in minimal. So it's a very comprehensive document, but it's been crafted over the past, I want to say 15 to 20 years at the state level, and it's been used as the Pennsylvania model has been used, and it's kind of pulled as kind of a really great model by other, and it's used in other states as well, but this is crafted specifically for Pennsylvania.
Dawn, I have a question.
Yes.
Can you hear me?
Yes. Very loud.
Sorry. You're saying I was loud?
Just ask the question, Dennis, please.
Did we decide on the highest standard or minimal, what the county would be willing to cover?
I believe at our last meeting, we said they would cover the entire thing. And I think part of the reason we decided that is because the minimal is usually such a small area of the property, and it would be an incentive for people to protect their property to cover the whole thing. And so that was adjusted to, I believe the program manual was adjusted. I took the question out because we were not putting a limitation on it. So there is no limitation in the program manual that would only cover a certain portion of the easement.
Okay.
So to continue the easement, there is Carbon County language that needs to go into that easement, and that is the Carbon County beneficiary language. And so this is, talks about what needs to be added in. So first, it's got instructions for, so in the We Can Serve PA model grant of conservation easement and declaration of covenants, beneficiaries are named in section 1.08 and rights of beneficiaries are described in section 6.06. So the instructions for identify Carbon County. Let me grab my. For identifying Carbon County as a beneficiary, so, and it's basically, this is telling the applicant and who is drafting, or the applicant's attorney who is drafting the conservation easement, these are the things that you need to add into these different sections that identify Carbon County as a beneficiary, and then what their rights are as a beneficiary. So the specific rights vested in each beneficiary listed in this section are described in Article 6. But A, county is a beneficiary, the conservation easement vested in holder by this grant has been purchased in whole or in part by funds provided to the holder by the county of Carbon, the county, acting under the authority granted by. That I did not know. I don't know if if some sort of resolution was passed in January after the referendum is passed, but this is something that the solicitor can fill in. Generally, it's the enabling legislation for the program itself. Or it could be that once this is all passed, there's some sort of resolution that says this is the program, and at that point, that would be information that goes in here. Such ordinance with the regulations and program requirements promulgated under the authority of such ordinance are referred to in this grant collectively as the county program. The portions of the property as to which the county funds have been used to purchase this grant are referred to collectively as the county program area. And in this case, it would likely be the entire property or the entire easement. If it was only going to be a portion of the easement, this is the place where you would say that like the minimal protection area isn't being covered, but since that wasn't a thing, that's not included here. And then in section 6.06, you add in that the rights of you add in 6.06, rights of beneficiaries. Carbon County has been granted the following rights under this grant. The right to exercise holders' rights and duties under 6.02, should the holder fail to do so after notice and reasonable, not less than 30 days opportunity to cure. The right to prior approval, not to be unreasonably withheld or delayed of an amendment that would change the conservation objectives or weaken holders' power to block improvements, activities, and uses inconsistent with the conservation objectives. And the right to approve a transfer the holder's interests in the conservation easement, such approval not to be reasonably withheld or delayed. And these two sections are pretty directly right out of the commentary. The commentary is extremely comprehensive of how you can adjust the easement to make it fit the specific property. And also, as you can see, how you can adjust the easement to account for beneficiaries. And then also we've got a draft deed, and again, all of these things have to go through legal review, but these are kind of like the starting point. And then there's the deed restriction, which I believe I based off the DCNR deed restriction, just so because we're trying to keep things consistent. Again, the county may want something slightly different, significantly different, but we'll have to see what the solicitor wants. But right now, we kind of have placeholders or a place to start for all of these things. So ideally, if the program manual is, if you can see it digitally, if it's on the website, you would be able to click on all of these hyperlinks to pull up all of these different documents. Or alternately, on the website itself, it would have like the information on this page so that you can click on all of it and download all those documents that you need. So there is on the back end, again, once this gets up and running, the county website is going to probably have a whole nother page off of the OSIAB page, a whole county program page where applicants can find all this information. And that is all I have. So now we're
Yeah.
judged properly. What's flashing red? Why is it flashing red?
Still there. Yeah, so it should be on there.
Don't want to lose it because I think I lost it last minute. So that completes the review of the program manual. Well, then the next question, I guess, well, first, does anybody have any questions about this? Because then the next step would be recommendation of the committee on the program manual for commissioners.
Right, so can I get a motion a second to recommend this? Recommendation of this program manual to the Carbon County Commissioners for approval.
So moved.
Seconded,
Second.
any discussion? All in favor?
Aye. Yeah, so I think for the most part, we already kind of interspersed among the conversation of the program manual. We talked about the next steps already, which are, this is gonna go to the county commissioner for approval. There's a lot of things that they're gonna need to go through the manual itself and all those questions that we've got popped out for legal review. Dan has arranged for us to do a work session with the commissioners on January 30th. So at that point, we're going to present the program manual to them and walk them through it and answer any questions they might have. And then it'll be up to them to do their legal review. And then once legal review is finished, they would vote on approving it or not, or what changes they want to see. And
You said January 30th.
Just
What was the date for the?
January 30th, Dan arranged for the two of us to go. And I think Dennis is going to be virtually to present this to the commissioners in a work session.
But Don, don't we want to have Jason send this to them ahead of time? So that if the solicitor has time to review it, to make the conversation more meaningful.
But as you can see from looking at these other documents, there's still kind of a lot of the back end stuff that needs to be created. It's just that I don't necessarily know if any of that would come back to the Open Space Advisory Board. It more likely will be just either created or reviewed at the planning level and the commissioner's level, or if they come to us for a little bit more assistance to create some of it. But I think the advisory board was slated with coming up with the criteria and the program, and that's what you guys have done. So I think that probably from an advisory board perspective, I'm not sure how long it might take. 1, 2 months, 3 months for it to go through the commissioners and create the other pieces that need to be created. So I would hope that by this summer that we could maybe start rolling out the kind of the education workshop for the municipalities and land trusts about the program. And at that point, hopefully we'll have a time frame of when the open applications are going to be. So from the Open Space Advisory Board, I think maybe, and this is something, if you guys want to do this, one of the things that I mentioned last time was a signage program. trying to come up with, so maybe for the next meeting, it's starting to work on a signage program, so figuring out how to come up with a logo, figuring out what the requirements for signage are going to be. Because as you recall, in section 2, I believe, under number 14, we talked about an acknowledgement sign. So that would be kind of designing the program that went along with that acknowledgement sign requirements.
Do you have like examples of like neighboring counties that might have signage?
I believe I have the signage program details from Monroe County. We can probably also get them from Northampton County.
I
So
could take pictures in New Jersey of all of the land trails, just send them out to everybody else I see them.
I mean, that would be great if you could look at that for, there's an example. If maybe before the next meeting, if we could email that out to us so we can start to get some thoughts in our heads.
Be nice to have some continuity there too, throughout the state, something that in some fashion that it's
If there are, yeah.
recognizable, yeah.
Yeah.
Not that we want to confuse it with the ag program, but I believe Dave has a sign that goes up for preserved farms. Be interesting just to see what that looks like.
is that a state mandated sign or is it
Oh,
for the ag program?
the ag program, no, that's one that was designed by the ag board.
Okay,
Yeah, we have our own sign.
yeah, so if we can send that information out and I'll try and see what other sign information, we can get it all to Jason so he can get it out for the next meeting.
We should look at Lee's creation of the Carbon County map of water, farms, and land.
Mhm. The logo that she did.
It's colorful.
Yeah, we'll bring that along. I have a question, Dawn, and for you and for them, for the board. I think it would be valuable for maybe, after we get the signage done, if we could have some sample applications to review. So I'm wondering,
In different set, like phase 1, phase 2, which ones are almost done.
well, and I'm wondering if you would have some applications, and I will volunteer to, you would take the private information off of them, the actual owners and so forth. If you have any that we could turn into.
Like a DCNR application?
Yeah.
You could pull the data off of that?
Exactly, so that we could take that and then create a Carbon County application out of that information. And we could have, maybe 3 of those to have the group review and rank and go through the process. So I'm thinking like, not next meeting, but maybe the meeting after that, we might want to have
If
something.
you're offering to pull the information out, I'm happy to share
I'll
some.
help,
The DCNR application.
I'll help you do that, if you can get me some, like I said, just pull out the sensitive information that you don't want seen, and then we can do the rest.
Because I mean, the first one I'm thinking of is the,
That would really be helpful.
last year we protected 633
Right.
acres in Penn Forest Township, to go to the Game Commission, so I can certainly, and that has a DCNR grant, so I can certainly pull that. I can try and find
You have one that
some things
wasn't,
that are smaller.
if you have one that wasn't funded,
DCNR grant that wasn't funded?
yeah, you probably are successful in all of them, you're like a batting 1,000.
Well, here's the thing, DCNR wants ready to go project.
Yeah.
So, there's only in 15 years, there's only one DCNR grants I didn't get funded and that was for our conservation easements.
So
They're
anyway,
public, it's public information.
Yeah, technically
You
DCNR
shouldn't
grants,
really have to
are-
redact
Yeah.
a lot of information. I mean, we can just overlook
Yeah,
that
but
part.
I
We're
think we
just
have-
looking at
Right.
details on
Right,
the
exactly.
approval.
but what I'm offering is taking out taking the information that's in the DCNR application and translate it into the matching grant application for the county. And,
basically, mocking up some
Yes.
grant applications based on projects that were already completed.
you folks think that's
The
the
learning
worthwhile?
lesson for us, actually.
I think that's
Definitely.
an important next step for us, so I'm willing to help with that. You get me?
Dan, that's a great idea. It's a dry run.
Yeah.
Doing- I don't know if you still have the application of that small property up on the Kittatinny.
Yeah,
That's,
Yeah.
could be an
Yeah.
example.
it's at the nature center. I could grab that too. Yeah.
Who was the holder of that property that you mentioned a while ago, that 600 acres up at Unionville?
And that is, it went to the game commission, so
I know,
we,
but who was the holder of the property?
the game commission's the holder. You mean who was the original owner?
Original owner.
Oh, Drake's Creek. Drake's Creek Association.
Art Schwartz?
Uh,
Does that ring a bell?
yes.
Huh?
Yes, the name was Schwartz, yeah. Yeah, because it was a family property, so I was dealing with a couple of different family members.
The trail.
But it was originally, I think, purchased by a guy and maybe his brother, and then as things do, it trickled down to more people, but they used to just come up here. They hadn't used it in a number of years. They used to just come up and,
I think they were leasing it out to different hunting clubs.
yes.
Yes.
Yeah, because when we took the game commission out for a site visit, there was somebody came driving off the property in their ATV to see like 8 game commission officers walking through the property, probably scared the crap out of them, and so,
I have a question on that signage thing. Are you referring to that little button that was that picture?
That looked beautiful.
Yeah, that's nice. And did you create that? Nice. Thanks.
Don, I don't know if you want, and Dan, if you want an example of an easement, if the one we have in Carbon County is KD land on the Nescahoning side of Mount Pisgah.
yeah, but that
don't know
was
if
so
that
long ago, I don't even know if I could find the easement, but it's not I'm sure it's not a weed conserved PA easement. I don't know. We probably don't even have the DCNR grants. I was more thinking of things from the past couple of years. And again, submitting a DCNR grant for an easement is not something that happens often. The only one I've done recently is for an easement adjacent to Hawk Mountain, but obviously that's not in Carbon County, but we could still, for these mock-ups, we could find ones that aren't, we could use ones that aren't necessarily in Carbon County. It was just, I was trying to think of ideas that are in Carbon County.
Yeah, we can just make believe it's in Carbon County.
Yeah.
It's not a big
We
deal.
can make believe.
It surely will help us because,
Yeah.
we have to learn this, so. Better to look at
I mean, you
something.
could actually create one that's not actual.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
That'd be a little harder though than taking one that's already there and just copying and pasting.
Well, I mean, I could create one of one I'm probably going to do in the future, but I don't think that'd be fair.
I don't think that we're gonna see a lot of easement applications. I think we're gonna see mostly fee simple acquisitions.
I think you might see, if you're gonna see easements, it would probably be from land trusts, because funding easements is so much more difficult that having a pot of funding for an easement is something that might make more easements bubble up. I mean, right now, I can think of 2 potential rather large easements that I'm working on, that if they come to fruition, I can see myself applying for later this year.
I'm curious, and even though we're moving quite fast and as fast as we can, does anyone get any feedback from the general public that ask questions about, since the referendum was passed, what's happening? Do we get any questions like that?
I have talked to a couple of landowners. I think maybe Dave might have passed somebody along to me.
A while back, I did pass somebody along that was looking to preserve their land that wasn't farmland.
So
I would,
go ahead, Ann.
I would hope after your January 30th meeting, or if the press regularly attends that meeting, that it could just be sort of an update that the Open Space Advisory Board has made recommendations and the program's moving along. You want to keep all that great momentum going, and you've been doing great work and worked really fast and efficiently, and the public should know that.
I think that the press won't be at the workshop meeting, if I'm not mistaken.
That's correct.
But perhaps after that meeting and with the commissioner's approval, we could appear at a regular commissioners meeting and, you know, make a couple statements about, like Ann just said, so that the press gets it and the Times News will get it and Channel 13 will get it, and we'll get some good publicity out of that, so people will hear. I think it's really important that we do that because I think the vast majority of the public has forgotten that we passed this referendum. And so I think it's really important that we do that. About 3 weeks, maybe a month ago now, it was in the paper about the commissioners approving the criteria. So we did get one article, but I think that a more general thing about, hey, the Open Space Board has been working on this program. They have made all of these recommendations to the commissioners. Commissioners are now working on the legal aspects of it, and we'll get back to the board with their information. And we expect the program to be up and running sometime in this year. We can, I don't know how specific we want to be, but that I think is really important for the public to hear.
What we'll do is, I'll get with you right after the meeting. We'll come up with a release and I'll handle it under my report at next week's meeting.
Oh, okay. All right, that's good. All right. That sounds good.
Yes, are there any other questions about next steps or what we want to tackle moving forward? I think we have a kind of good idea of for the next 2 meetings.
We have been talking about public meetings too. I think Ann has mentioned it a couple times. And Dennis, do we want to have at some point a public meeting with this board so that the public can meet the board and ask questions about what's going on? I'm just asking, do we want to do that? That could be another meeting down the road.
Once we have something, like once it's approved, that makes sense, because right now we kind of say it's in limbo.
Mhm.
And once it's approved, that could be part of the education plan.
Right.
To be part of like us learning it and being able to present it, or if someone asks us questions is important as well. So I think that the next couple months, once everything's laid out, we could be, in a good position to even go into municipalities and, say, hey, this is what it's about, this is where we're at from a county level. And how would that impact you as a municipality, and what can you do moving forward? Because we're gonna look for that buy-in eventually. It's gonna help the land trust or the land to be preserved if municipalities are involved, so I look at it in my perspective where in my township, this is happening at a county level, knowing that it's coming to the municipality and saying, hey, this is how it works. This is what you could do. This is what your part could be, not this year, maybe years to come, and how we could together save land.
Good.
That's a good point. I mean, if we could come up with some kind of a little script so that, everybody would be sort of on the same page if you go to the different municipalities to spread the word.
Because I know when, no matter what goes on in our county, that outreach to the municipalities gets coverage. It's 100%, no matter what.
Yeah, anything to raise the awareness, just like you said, to remind people that the referendum had passed and that we've been working behind the scenes for many months to get in a position to start taking applications.
I think this has been a terrific process for this group to go through, because the program now from the ground up. All the parts of it. You're aware of all the parts of it, even the parts that you aren't involved with, but you know what the program is now. And when people ask you questions, you have some information to share with people. So I think I think this has been a really valuable process for you to go through.
Other idea, do we want to, like, once this is finally approved and we have something to kind of roll out with, do we want to have something formal where we invite like Cindy Dunn with DCNR out to do like a press conference? Kind of a like, yay, this is out there. We're excited that this is going to be happening in Carbon, and maybe that generates some even more press content.
I definitely see something like, we're definitely gonna do something. Once the program's up and running to get it all out there.
Yeah.
What exactly we're gonna set up yet? I mean, that's something that we could talk about with the board as we move down the road, as we get closer to that date. But,
DCNR used to have grant workshops that were in different places, when they were in person. Back in the day, when they were in person, they were in different places throughout the state. Now it is just a virtual presentation, and then the recording, so you can go and look at it at any time. But I think that, yeah, moving forward as a board, you want to discuss what's the best way to get the word out. Is it an in-person workshop? Is it the virtual thing? Is it then going out to the different, different municipalities to do presentations? What's the best way to get all the information out there?
Carbon County Fair. I mean, that's the whole county, that would be, with the political season coming up, they're gonna have all of those folks there. So that might be a good target, because that's late in the fall. Hopefully we'll have everything in place by then.
Gotta get that sign made.
Yeah.
We save another job.
Don, two things that came across my mind that I'm sure the board could wonder about this. One of, what are we thinking about doing with the line application? And once everything's set up, what do our meetings look like? Are we gonna continue all monthly, or do we do quarterly? What do other communities and municipalities do?
So in Monroe County, I mean, for a while, there were monthly meetings. But then it kind of got to the point where it was only if there needed to be a meeting. So I can, depending on how many applications come in and kind of what the timing of that is, I think that's going to really determine how often the meetings need to take place. And also based on what are the deadlines for the applications themselves.
I think you
And also-
keep them scheduled, and then
Yeah.
if you don't need to get together, you can easily send an email out, say, there's no need to meet this month unless somebody has some pressing issues, or we're working on some outreach programs or something.
Yeah, assuming we're going to get a good number of applications, I like the quarterly, having a quarterly deadline, and that gives 3 months for the staff and the board to review what has come in on a rolling basis.
Well,
Just as
that's if the applications are rolling. That's still to be determined. Are they gonna be rolling
Yeah.
applications? Is it going to be multiple times a year? Will it just be one time a year? I think we'd probably make a good argument for having at least twice a year. And if you're gonna do it twice a year, does rolling make more sense, or does having firm deadlines make more sense? And that'll also play into how often the advisory board needs to get together. But I mean, there are other things that the advisory board can do. We've already talked about the signage program. There are other things that the advisory board can decide that they want to look into.
I agree with Dennis. I like the idea of at least quarterly, or to having quarterly deadlines, because this is the matching grant most of the time, probably. And, I don't think that it needs to be like the DCNR deadline is in April. I don't think ours needs to match with that, because it can come before that. The applicant would really be benefited if it came before that. They could tell DCNR, we already have a committed match, or they've already submitted, but they to DCNR, but they could come to us for the match after they submitted that one. So I don't think we should limit when these applicants, there could be other programs that have grants. So I don't think we should limit it to once or twice a year. I think quarterly that's my opinion. I think quarterly is a better idea. And that way you're not flooded with a whole bunch of applications in February and then none the rest of the year. I like that Dennis's idea of having them rolling, at least, like quarterly.
And,
I would also advise if some quarterly keep a long application, let them apply whenever, but if they're not in by that, right, so we set it up as February 1st is the first one, and then 3 months would be May 1st. If they get it in during that window, then it gets reviewed at the May meeting. If it comes in May 3rd, goes into the next cycle then. I prefer to do things like that, that way people can just get them in when they need to. Does that make sense, Don? Or is
Yeah,
that
I mean, a lot of it's gonna come down to the logistics from your department, because your department, whoever is in charge of it from your department is gonna have to be working with the applicants and also figuring out, making sure that they have everything in the applications complete.
So I think as long as we have a cutoff date.
I mean, we would keep, correct me if I'm wrong, we would keep applications, like, let's say we get a batch, we only can do so many, like, we keep them rolling, or,
Let's hope we have that.
I don't know, like, I'm thinking, my brain's thinking farmland preservation, so like, we would keep it, and we would keep what we have in stock, or, how, because that's where my thought process is how do we manage that if it rolls over?
I think that's also going to be based on how much money the commissioners are willing to allocate each year.
Okay,
So I mean, they might say that, this year you have this much money that you can put towards applications, but then the question is, if it's a rolling basis, then if you get it in sooner, you got money, and if you get it in later, maybe the money's all used by then.
okay,
So I guess that's kind of an argument against rolling applications, just because you might lose out on a really high ranking project if you got some projects that didn't rank quite as high earlier on and you were spending money on them. Again, we don't even know if we're gonna have that problem.
right, yeah, that's.
But these are, and we don't need to make this decision today. This can be an agenda item for a future meeting, is like what makes the most sense. And we might still need that input from the commissioners of how they're going to roll out the money.
Mhm.
Something else you might want to consider too, we ran into it with the board already. You have a deadline to submit your application, and some people throw it in one day before it's the due date, and you have to consider it at the next board meeting, which is a bunch of BS. Because you can't comprehend everything and do everything in overnight.
Yeah, well, I think that's why Dave was saying it would have to be in like for today's board meeting, it would had to have been in like 3 or 4 weeks before now, because of the fact that they need time to
Right.
review it and make sure it's complete.
Right.
And then, and ideally, it would be sent out to the board before the meeting so that all the board can review it and rank it. And then you
Right.
come to the meeting, and you've got your rankings. And so then you're discussing your rankings and making sure everybody's on the same page.
I have a question about the money, okay? I had somebody ask me, so like all that money that they saw, is supposed to, well, how much money is this open space gonna get? I mean, like, it's like, because, these people voted for it, so they wanna know about the money.
Nobody knows.
And nobody knows, right? But the point that I'm trying to make is too, like, so when the commissioners approve this and everything, are they going to say, we're going to allocate so much money to this program and so much to farmland preservation? I mean, are they just gonna go case by case as time
That's a
goes on?
question I intend to ask the commissioners at our January 30th meeting, but we have a commissioner here, so I don't know if you want to say anything in answer to that question.
I think the commissioners are gonna take the advice coming from here, and it's gonna be on a case by case.
But we're talking about the whole,
How much money?
the whole pot.
Right.
So how do we divide up the 10 between programs?
That I think the commissioners are gonna look heavily into as exactly how it's done based on the criteria. I know I'm trying to sidestep some of that, but I
No,
think
not really.
two commissioners are in the same learning process as you are.
Mhm.
I intend to ask the question. I don't expect an answer on
The general
January
public.
As soon as Dennis bounces around.
Well, this is, yeah, this is what I would say. I think we have to go back and remember the intent. So if we have a pot of $10 million, we already committed $1 million for ag and Dave has matched it with state money. So the intent of whether it's ag or open space is trying to get the highest quality land protected as quickly as possible. And so there's a lot of moving parts, and I don't think we should tie our hands by setting a designated amount because we want to. I think, and Dawn knows, and others in this room who maybe have been involved in acquisition projects, some are quick and some drag out. And I don't think we want to tie our hands. All of the 10 million is going to go to preserve farms and open space. How much of each, to me, is less important than what quality applications are coming in for us to fund to lock in the land. That's the spirit and the intent of this. And that's just my opinion that I'm willing to share with the commissioners, that I don't, what's the purpose of trying to separate the pots now when we don't know what the demand is going to be?
Dennis, I totally realize that. I'm just saying, the general public, I mean, I had a couple of people that know I'm on this board. They asked me that question, so I'm like, okay. We don't even have any applications yet.
Right.
And I think tied to this is, how are the commissioners going to fund this program? Is it gonna be a bond issue, or is it gonna be a line of credit loan at a bank, at a local bank? Because one way you have to go through a lot of procedures and you have to decide kind of ahead of time how much you're gonna have a year or whatever. And with a line of credit, you can use it as you need it. So the commissioners have to decide that question as well. And I don't know enough about that to have an opinion on how they should do it. I have enough knowledge to ask the question. That's all.
Have they borrowed the money that they committed to ag yet? Last year?
That again, that's another one for the bond committee. So probably gonna be discussing sooner rather than later.
Well, what is the highest rate of interest? Floating the bond or the line of credit? Which is cheaper? Nobody knows.
Dick.
What? The moving
Dick, I don't-
part.
They go like this.
And again, that's not really, I mean, this board isn't going to be making any sort of advisement on that because
Especially
that,
have some
yeah.
kind of answer for somebody like you said,
Right.
and I
Yeah,
was
the
a
general
vote.
public that voted yes
Yeah.
for this, they wanna know, like, people wanna know where their money's going.
I think it's important for us to get answers on some of these
Yeah,
things
sure.
so that you're not gonna make the decision. This board isn't gonna make the decision, but it's important for the board to find out what the answers are and what the commissioners are going to do.
Yeah, so we don't say the wrong thing, you know?
Right.
Exactly.
Yeah. Gotcha.
Don't want to be eating crow.
There's positives and negatives about a line of credit or floating a bond. We were asked how much money do we need, and none of us can answer that right now. We know ag is locked in for the next 12 or 24 months. And then I believe there's farm applications after those 5 get completed that Dave has on his plate. But for the open space, we don't know what the demand is going to be. And there's all sorts of IRS regulations and everything that the county bond council gets paid to figure out. So we really don't know the details at this point.
Conversation.
Okay, any further business? Next meeting,
When is the next meeting scheduled? I saw you had on there for, March and April, but I didn't see.
Should be February 15th.
February 15th.
Oh, no, that takes a while.
February 15th.
Yeah, I think
That one's still here, right?
Oh, wait.
Did you say that February we have to move?
No, March and April.
No,
Oh, March and April, okay.
March and April,
Yeah,
March
there
21st.
was- there was some kind of notification that they're gonna move it to
Yeah.
the commissioner's office, right?
Yes, yeah, March and next month.
Next month.
The fall, yeah,
Yeah,
not
you're
February.
correct, Mark.
February's here, March and April.
March and April,
Okay.
just to clarify.
Okay, here no further business, I have a motion to adjourn.
I'll make a motion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
You did that.
Good job, Son.
11:30.
Great job, Don.